Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show and today's weekend best of special. My goodness, it was a busy week. I was with the All In podcast guys on Monday in LA and then Tucker Carlson in Kansas City, Missouri on Thursday. And then on Tuesday night, we were all together, you and I, after that ABC presidential debate. Did you watch? Hello. If you missed it, you can see our instant reaction live from this set, as well as analysis from Emily Jashinsky and Lowry. It went totally viral. My goodness, that thing was everywhere. You'll see why in the clip that we selected for today. Plus, Buck Sexton was with me to break down one key moment from the debate that showed how the ABC moderators let this thing go completely off the rails. Plus, our friends from the Fifth Column, they're always fun. They joined me to talk about the Taylor Swift endorsement. Man, she's annoying. As well as reaction that we are seeing from focus groups to this debate. Didn't actually go so swimmingly as the mainstream would have you believe. At least that's not what the instant reaction was. They were pretty skeptical, actually, as it turns out, of Kamala Harris's performance. And Adam Carolla joined us when we were out in LA to talk about the feminization of men in America and so much more. Enjoy. And talk to you Monday. Well, I watched it. Did you watch it? I'm disgusted. I'm ashamed of those moderators at ABC News. They did exactly what their bosses wanted them to do. The person who runs ABC News is a close personal friend of Kamala Harris that is responsible for Kamala Harris and her husband meeting. And they did Dana Walden's bidding tonight. It was 3 against 1 on that debate stage this evening. Hi, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly, a special program tonight for you reacting to the debate. It was 3 against 1. It's very easy to look like you know what you're doing when both moderators are entirely on your side. Trump did the best he could under the circumstances, but it really was like 3 fighters in the ring pummeling one opponent. And Trump tried to take them all on. He did fine. He did as best as he could. He was thrown a few times to the point where he was unnecessarily defensive and he was getting angry. And so was I. Were you? This was a mistake to trust ABC News with this debate. The Republicans must learn from this mistake. The same way the Democrats never agree to do anything with moderators they don't entirely trust. This should be the last time the Republicans ever do this. Because those 2 moderators tried to sink Donald Trump tonight. The numerous fact checks on what he said and none on what she said. None. I don't remember a single fact check of anything she said, and she lied repeatedly. She just got away with it. In the moderator's eyes, that was Donald Trump's job to fact check her. That's correct. Except you didn't employ that same tactic when it came to Trump, and you accused him of lying even when it was your opinion that he lied. When Trump tried to say that his comment that he lost 2020 by a whisker was him being sarcastic, David Muir actually injected saying, I didn't hear sarcasm. Who gives a shit what you heard? Who died and left you political analyst in chief? You're supposed to be the objective news anchor of World News Tonight. That's a comment you make to your significant other, David, not on the debates. It didn't sound like that to me. Shut up. That is inappropriate. It's not for you to make that call. Leave it up to Kamala Harris. Leave it up to people like me who will play the soundbite and let the audience decide. But you were out of line, and they did it to him over and over and over again. And the worst piece of all of this is the obvious tactic by ABC News, which was as follows. Mr. Trump, you said something incredibly controversial and terrible. Let me remind you of what it was. Do you have any regrets or thoughts on how terrible you were? Trump answers. Vice President Harris, how bad is Trump? And then she'd answer. It happened over and over again. That was the format. Mr. Trump, you're a piece of shit. Kamala Harris, isn't he a shit? Thank you. It was incredible. And then anything Trump said, fact check, fact check, fact check. And their fact checks were full of shit. I'm swearing even more than normal right now because I'm mad. I'm angry. I'm angry at them, at ABC, at my industry that I want nothing to do with. And I've never been happier to be outside and be able to say how I truly feel. And yes, even with some colorful words, because that's what the situation calls for. They're trying to steal this election. They're openly working to sink him. I think it was so bad, their bias against him and toward her, that it's going to backfire. I actually think the American public is going to see through this, and there's probably going to be some empathy for Trump. No fair-minded person could think anything other than that they were in the tank for him, and it was 3-1 on that stage tonight. Joining me to discuss it, Emily Jashinsky, D.C. correspondent for Unheard, and Rich Lowry, editor-in-chief of National Review. I've never seen anything like it, Rich. I've never seen anything quite so biased at the presidential debate level.
Well, it continues a theme of this race, right? They've been completely in the tank for Kamala Harris, and the moderators on the debate stage were completely in the tank for Kamala Harris. And you knew where the night was going when we got the first fact check when Trump was talking about abortion and was talking about, he misspoke in this instance. He got it right later when he said the West Virginia governor, the former Virginia governor had talked about you can have abortions after birth, right? And he didn't say in any state has abortions after birth. He just said the governor had said this, which is a correct statement. And then he's fact checked by saying, well, Mr. Trump, there's no state in America that has abortion after 9 months. Actually, there are a few instances in Minnesota. He was correct about that as well. But this is the point. The fact check was incorrect, right? And this is why debate moderators shouldn't fact check. You know, the CNN moderators did not fact check because what you think the fact is in that moment may be subjective, you may be wrong, and you're tilting the playing field. And certainly to fact check one candidate and never fact check the other. She did the Charlottesville lie, the both sides are fine people lie, no fact check. She did the bloodbath lie. He clearly didn't mean that, you know, the country is going to be, there are going to be riots in the street if he's not elected. It was an economic statement, no fact check. So the moderators were a disgrace. It's one of the reasons Trump seemed on defensive a lot of the night. One was he took a lot of bait from Kamala Harris that he didn't need to. The other was the horrendous moderation.
Agree. He took bait he shouldn't have taken. He was defending himself on the pandemic. He was on his heels instead of going on offense and pivoting off of the bad point for him onto something that was more offensive. That was a tactical error by him. But I do want to just spend a minute on this fact check you just mentioned. Here it is. Here's the moment we're referring to where Lindsay Davis helpfully fact checked Trump on this abortion claim.
They have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, is doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
Okay, that's not true. And maybe she can use the word kill. It's not like somebody's sticking a knife in the dead baby, in the live baby as it's dying, Emily. But you and I both know that in places like Minnesota and elsewhere, if you are trying to abort a baby in the 9th month or otherwise, and it's born instead of dying in the mother's womb, they will let that baby sit on the table and die. And Trump's claim, though Rich is right, he said at first West Virginia, later he corrected himself to Virginia. Their former governor, Ralph Northam, said this on camera, admitted to this. Here is the soundbite.
If a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. So
I'll give you one other. Roger Severino, he's with the Heritage Foundation, tweeting out the following. Harris, and as it turns out, Lindsay Davis, is dead wrong. Some babies do survive abortions and can be saved, but are denied life-saving treatment, including under Tim Walz's watch. Harris even voted against the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act to defend, that would have defended the lives of these babies, their right to live once born. Unconscionable. Trump didn't say any of that, okay? He tried. But the nerve of this moderator to inject herself into it without any of this.
Here's
you,
what
Emily.
here's what I find especially infuriating about that. She editorialized with all of the sanctimony in the world to say that word, to focus in on that word, quote, execute. I don't know if she knows any of the context that you just provided, which is all completely accurate and known to people who follow the news closely, unless you're in a total bubble and aren't doing your job, which is obviously the case here. But she chose to editorialize and say, it's not true. You can't execute. You can't kill babies. I mean, actually, it depends on whether or not you consider having a baby who could be cared for, born alive, and then left without care. If you don't consider that an execution, okay. But she is injecting here to quibble editorially, and she doesn't have a leg to stand on this particular issue. There are obvious moments where Kamala Harris could have been fact-checked just as any candidate could. I don't object to them fact-checking Donald Trump. I object to them fact-checking, as Rich said, period. We didn't, after that CNN debate about Biden, talk about the moderators for a lot of reasons, namely because of Biden, but we also really saw them sink into the background of that debate. It was the opposite in this case. They were constantly injecting themselves, constant fact checks. Didn't get a fact check on IVF, Project 2025, as Abigail Schreier pointed out. Nothing on Charlottesville, even when Snopes had fact-checked what Joe Biden was saying about Charlottesville that Kamala Harris repeated. Nothing on abortion, nothing on that bloodbath comment. They just let it all go and just went straight for Trump. It was all him, none her, nothing, not one fact check on Kamala Harris.
But Emily, what you point out gets to the insanity of it. If she was going to be strictly accurate in her fact check, she would have said, well, it's not technically an execution because you're not affirmatively killing the child. Instead, after the child's born, you're just giving the child comfort care and not the medical care that might be necessary to save him or her. That's an opinion, right? That's a debate answer. But instead they do it under the guise of a fact check, which gives it this authority it doesn't deserve that they're using that by the grace of them sitting there as moderators. It's a total abuse of their role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the same thing on Trump's attempt to claim that when he said on a podcast that he lost the 2020 election by a whisker, I said this on my show today, you guys. I said, if I were asking the questions tonight, I would ask him about that. And about the fact that he said on a podcast last week he lost by a whisker. And you should bring that up. And that's fine to bring that up, which they did. And I was actually surprised by Trump's answer. I was being sarcastic. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know that he was being sarcastic in that answer either. I didn't detect the sarcasm myself. That's not appropriate as a fact check, David Muir. I wanted to do this since the debate because I share your frustration about Trump on immigration in particular. And there's just so many opportunities for him to shove it down her throat. And he tried to bring it up, but just didn't do the most effective job of it. But I have this little bit I'm going to show you with these sound bites. It's a run. It's just this one Q&A. It went for 2 minutes, but I sliced and diced it so you can see, we can forensically go through just how effed up the whole thing was. This clip, I'm going to show these clips, just show you how bad David Muir was, how frustrating Kamala Harris was, and how frustrating Trump was, which is why we're all feeling so frustrated about this debate, those of us who do not want to see this woman ascend to power in the presidency. So let's go to the issue of when they did ask Kamala Harris about what took you so long to try to do anything about the border, right? 6 months before the election, Joe Biden puts a Band-Aid in place to try to look like, oh, we've got control of the border. We all knew why he was doing that. He doesn't care about the border for all the reasons you just espoused. So here's the question to Harris.
My question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
Okay, good question. Why did it take so long? And would you have done anything differently? Here we go. Fair question. Let's hear what she has to say.
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing.
Nothing to do with immigration.
You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom.
So she pivots off of one of the most important issues in the country today. Why didn't you do anything about this? And would you have done anything differently than your boss to his rallies? And we all knew what was going to happen because she was like something shiny over here. And Trump, that is his trigger spot, his rallies, his crowd sizes, ran like Strudwick after the liver snaps when I throw them on the side lawn, ran for it with gusto. Here he is.
People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost.
Okay, so then you're like, oh, please pivot back to the issue. Please, Trump, bring it back to immigration. Like, shove all those facts that you just said down her throat. He could have brought up Laken Riley. He could have brought up the families he's been spending time with at the border, whose daughters have been killed at age 12 by these illegals crossing into America. He went a different way, which it was an issue, and it's fine to talk about. It was not the best issue. Here's where he went.
And look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
Now David Muir comes in to save the day more. Oh, here I am, objective fact checker. I'm going to hammer Orange Man. Watch.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people
I'm
on
taking
television
it from the city
saying
manager.
Their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris.
Now the moderator is arguing with Trump over a city manager in Springfield, Ohio versus what Trump has seen on television. By the way, that's why you should not fact check a thing that is in dispute and has not been settled, David Muir. But things are spinning off the rails. How far away are we right now from the Joe Biden immigration policies and whether she would have done anything differently? So now he turns to Harris. This is your opportunity, David Muir, to get this thing back on track and look at her and say, the question, madam, was, would you have done anything differently than Joe Biden did? He does turn to Kamala Harris, and this is what happens.
So I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme.
What? That's not the fucking toss.
This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney.
The toss to her is not, would you have anything to say? I'll just follow up. Would you like to respond? It's, you didn't answer the question. You talked about rallies. And of course, what does she say? Nothing about immigration. All these Republicans love me. He's unhinged. This is why we felt sick when this thing was over.
Well, this also shows you, and I like that you broke it up in that way. It's very clear that Kamala Harris memorized different little speeches and responses, and her whole game plan was get to speech A, get to speech B. It had nothing to do, and avoid, of course, actual policy discussion, which is what happened there. That was, I'll be honest with you, Megyn, like I'm having a little flashback trauma to watching that. Just because
Me too.
That was, if these are two boxers in a ring, that was Kamala Harris unsteady on her legs, ready for the knockout blow, and Trump going off into the corner and doing a little dance and waving, to people in the crowd. That for me, and it just makes me so mad because she knew exactly what she was doing, and it worked. Okay, you and I, it worked. Mm-hmm. She was able to evade
like a charm.
Worked like a charm, and Trump went right for it. But the other side of it, and I know that there's a lot of people who they think everything Trump does is great. I'm not one of those people. I do like Trump a lot and support his presidency with all that I can. He's a great presenter and entertainer. He's not a skilled debater. Those are different skill sets. You and I know, there are people say, oh, so-and-so is so good on current events. I'm like, they read off a piece of glass. They don't know anything, right? I mean, they're even within media, people can have different areas of competency or lack thereof. Same thing in politics. But I do think that because of I don't know if persecution narrative is the right way to put it, but because of the sense that everything is always stacked against Trump by the establishment, this very much plays into that. Trump has never had a great debate performance, has never had a great debate performance.
I don't know.
And yet has still won. Which one? I mean,
he sliced and diced those Republicans in 2016.
Oh, I'm thinking about general election debates, but yeah, I mean, he's very good and funny when he has. What was amazing about Trump in the general election, in the primary against Republicans, was how much he was able to command the stage, right? You've got 8 other people there or whatever it was. And it was Trump and really nobody else was there. And that's a superpower, right? I mean, really, most of the time you have all these politicians excuse me, they look like the kid in the class who really wants to get in and answer all the questions. And it's just not Trump just stands there and with limited time was always the center of attention no matter where he was. And he was actually center stage because he was first in the polls. In general elections, I mean, I'd have to think back. I don't think he did a great job against Hillary Clinton in the debate. I think he had an amazing campaign and obviously won that. I can't say that he did a great job against Joe Biden to memory. I'd have to go back and look at it the first time around. He obviously had a knockout blow against Biden this time around, but wasn't that really just Joe Biden?
Him.
I mean,
it was Joe Biden.
He was good.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump didn't step on it, but this time around, I was expecting something better. But I also think the debates.
I agree with you. Look,
really
I think people understand how unfair this was. I do think people understand how unfair this was, and I don't think this debate is going to move the polls. And we'll get to people who disagree with me. We've got some of that sound queued up, but this Trump has been spending time with grieving families whose kids were killed by illegals. He knows these facts. It's just he's driven by whatever he's seen on TV most recently. But we have been covering, look at this soundbite. He went down to the border and he met with moms who talked about the murder of their daughters. Watch this.
My daughter was just 12. She had dreams to be famous. She wanted to be a famous actor. June 17th was the day her life was taken. She was left with no clothing from the waist down, was thrown in a bayou, left. Was strangled to death. We believe, yes, she was assaulted. They had no reason to do anything that they did to Jocelyn. There was over 300 detention beds that they should have been at because they were detained and they were released when they shouldn't have been released. One had an ankle monitor, didn't stop anything. So now I have to go through the rest of my life with my son, always asking for his sister. Please take into consideration how important border control is because we're losing very innocent people to heinous crime. Please help him make a change.
This poor woman, her name is Alexis Nungare. Her daughter was Jocelyn. There was another mom down there, Patty Morin, talking about her daughter's murder. And both of the suspects had illegally entered the United States this year. They were released into the country. One had claimed he feared for safety if he'd been sent back to Venezuela. The other was fitted with an ankle monitor, but removed it after it was determined he had no known criminal history. Doug Brunt, my husband, he doesn't react to that much in the news. And so when it gets his attention, I know that something's gone either very right or very wrong. And he did not like this clip from Tim Walz reacting to the Taylor Swift news. Watch.
Taylor Swift signed childless cat lady. I have to get your response to that, Mr. Governor.
All those things, I am incredibly grateful, first of all, to Taylor Swift. I say that also as a cat owner, a fellow cat owner. Look, Swifties, you heard it. We know that it's there. That was eloquent, and it was clear. And that's the type of courage we need in America to stand up.
Courage. Okay, so for the listening audience, when he first reacted, his mouth was like this.
Yeah.
And my husband said he looks like Elmer Fudd. That's what he looks like, Elmer Fudd. Like there's something off about this guy. And just one more for you. Different but similar reaction from Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC.
The Harris for President campaign now has the two most perfectly timed and most important endorsements of this campaign. Joe Biden's 27-minute timed endorsement after he said, I'm not the candidate. Perfect timing. It just put a rocket on her to the nomination. And it's so important, I think, to the people who are going to be consuming that Taylor Swift endorsement, including those fathers of 8-year-old girls. And the timing on it is absolutely exquisite. The wording of it is flawless and perfect, right down to the cat lady stuff.
There you go. The fathers. That's you guys. The fathers of the young girls are going to be pushed. I know. I mean, I don't really get it, but perfect.
On Instagram by now?
First of all, I don't. Two very important comments that everyone should pay attention to. I really cannot stand on cable news when people pretend that something's funny because someone important is on. He said, I got my cat owner too. And everyone's like, oh my God, that was amazing. Tim Walz,
that is so true.
Pryor of Minnesota. That's the first very important thing. It makes me sick. The second thing is I don't like the Joe Biden. That was the rocket. First, I was at the DNC. I don't remember that rocket taking off. And then the fathers of 8-year-old girls. My daughter is 13, and as you could imagine, she's perfect and hilarious and everything. That said, I don't look to the people that she listens to on her Spotify account and say, who are they going to vote for? That's what I really want to know. Because, you know, sometimes it's Freddie Mercury and he doesn't have a choice right now.
I have an 11-year-old son. That's my youngest. And all the people he listens to sing about poop and farts. That's really his.
Who are these artists?
What is that?
There's a lot of songs on there. You're into, that's fine. But there's a lot of songs. These are not our political, opinion makers. Go ahead, Matt.
DJ Scatto.
Yeah, I might want to have a talk with him, by the way, but that's just, I'm not going to.
There have been many.
My daughter is a 16-year-old Swiftie. My other daughter is becoming a Swiftie. She's 9. And she's not going to be moved even a millimeter by this. She's moved by, as all 16-year-old girls are, by hilarious TikTok videos having to do with like skibbity rizzlers and things like that. And Melania Trump. Melania Trump is an absolute hero to 16-year-old girls. I think she's fantastic.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Well, to his 16-year-old.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
But I could see it. Sure.
She's my hero.
I mean, she's a hero to me, too.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
People hate Donald Trump so much that they've forgotten that she's our hottest first lady by a lot. By a lot. It's not even close. In like Abigail Adams, nothing. Please.
I'm on the record.
Abigail Adams. I don't believe you because Vogue put Jill Biden on the cover as our fashion icon we're supposed to be looking up to. Jill Biden. Remember Jill Biden? Remember Joe Biden? Yeah, he's still president. Just FYI, I don't know if you're aware. Here is another attempted. Well, it's Trump who's doing the fact check, but I can't believe David Muir had the nerve to say this about the crime stats. Watch this. SOT 9.
Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud.
That is totally correct. What Trump said in response, he was having to fact check the moderator, gents. Fact check the moderator. Not only is he right, they did remove the major cities, several of them, from that crime study that was referenced. But on top of that, the decrease in violent crimes is looking at all post-George Floyd. If you want to compare present year to 2019, pre-George Floyd, we are not down. We are up considerably. And Heather McDonald has been pointing this out and pointing out, if you want to go back even further and look at the Ferguson effect after 2014 and compare where we were prior to Ferguson versus now, again, we've skyrocketed, none of which would be offered by David Muir. But what do you make of the fact that Trump had to fact check not only Kamala, but the moderators?
It didn't help that, as Trump always does, he then extends and his own kind of apocalyptic hyperbole, right? So he's in the same way that like Dana Bash gives Kamala Harris 4 different ways to answer a question to make it soft on her. He gives moderators, especially ones who are keyed up through what I think is peer pressure, really, from their colleagues industrially, to be sort of tough on Trump so he doesn't abuse his platform. When he says, our country is being destroyed, Israel is going to cease to exist in 2 years, yeah. Which he said that Kamala is a communist, his dad's a communist, Joe Biden hates her. A lot of these are like
he
jokes.
Doesn't know he's alive.
Doesn't know that was funny. So like he is giving, in addition to that fact check there, and I take your word for it, Megyn, of his depiction of it, but he's also saying these other things, and so it I think dulls the impact. Right? Donald Trump is never going to come across as the person who's going to be the biggest truth teller on any stage. And especially towards the end when he knew, I think, that he was kind of scrambling for keeping his head above water in this debate, he sped up and he kept getting more and more hyperbolic in his statements in a way that it just becomes hard to take him seriously. And I think even in those things that he was saying about Kamala Harris, she was skillful in not taking the bait herself. She could have said, no, my dad's not a communist. She's like left
She left that there. She left a bunch of stuff there, which was very wise.
She's not capable.
And again,
it was smart, but she's not capable of doing it. She was like, that is not part of my rote memorization. What card is that on? I do not have it.
There were 2 grades that we were talking about last night. The one on substance and on style, and I think she did well on style. She backed up and she didn't fall on her face like we thought she was going to do. But if you look at the David Muir question, there's actually the first 4 or 5 words are the key to it. I mean, people kind of forget this. He said, Mr. President, as you know, which is a blatant accusation of lying. I mean, the thing is that there's a number of ways, and again, like Matt, I haven't looked at this stuff and looked at it recently. I'm trusting your take on it, Megyn. But there's a number of ways of looking at these statistics, right? Going back to 1993 in New York when there were over 2,000 murders. Like, oh, it's down. It's like, yes, but down. Where's your starting point? So you can be generous in some sense and say, you're interpreting this a different way. But if you look at it this way, Mr. President, but you're just going out of the block and saying, as you know, Mr. President, that is incorrect. I don't think you should do that as a moderator. I'm sorry. But
let me give you some stats. Let me give you some stats because we had Heather McDonald on the show who you can trust implicitly. I mean, Heather does her homework on all things revolving around crime. This is like one of her main beats. And here are some of the stats that we pulled in connection with that interview. According to the Council on Criminal Justice, comparing 2023 to 2019, the homicide rate 18% higher in 2023 versus 19. Gun assault rate 32% higher. Carjacking 93% higher. Car theft 105% higher. Chicago, total crime up 55% in 2023. Robbery up 38%. Car theft up 22%. Memphis, homicides up 87%. And as for those, the one article that the left, Rachel Maddow and David Muir are basing their claims on, that crime has been falling, that it's at a 50-year low and so on and so forth. The guy admits that the major cities were not included in this report. Some major cities like Chicago and Los Angeles did not report any data. So Trump was right. You don't have to believe Trump. You can believe me. You can believe Heather McDonald. You can believe the guy who authored the study on which David Muir is basing that claim. You can believe the Council on Criminal Justice. The point is, it's not the candidate's job to clean up the moderator's inaccurate questions. This is such bullshit. Again, he was in the foxhole. Everyone was surrounding him, firing down at the guy. And Trump was trying to stop the gunfire at every turn. The guy's human. And there's only so much he can do. And that's why I watched this thing and I felt empathy for him. I felt like this is unfair. This is not a fair test of what a president can do and what we should be putting our presidential candidates through in order to get to the office. It's almost cruel. It's trying to humiliate him. That's how I felt watching it.
I keep coming back to the fact that he talked about his expectations of unfairness in the debate. He did not expect them to be fair. He said so in advance. He said so before the CNN debate as well, and that they were fair. And just, if you know that is the case, there's two things they probably should have done, the campaign. Insist that there be another debate on Fox News or something like that, so that you at least have this other opportunity and it's already there. Force Kamala to do it. And the second thing is, again, you know what the defects of your candidate are. You know that he has difficulty just being disciplined and staying on message. That you should laser focus on that. Every question should come, and for every Kamala response, you should go back to the fact that you're in office right now. Why haven't you done it already?
Everyone.
You should have said it like twice. You should have said it every single time and then apologize.
He did get there.
I know you're at home and you're watching, and I've said this 8 times already, but I'll say it again because she is the sitting vice president. They aren't doing the things she promises you that she's going to do that are going to make your life better. What is she waiting for? You can't trust her. That would have worked. But he didn't.
No, he should have said. He never said that you can't trust her. She changes her positions all the time. She makes all these promises, but she doesn't do them while she's in office. His best answer was his closing statement, where he did make these points over and over. Here's a highlight.
Just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it?
Primacy and recency. That's what viewers remember. And here was the CBS focus group of, I believe it was Pennsylvania undecideds, reacting after the debate. And listen to what came up.
She just basically repeated everything that Biden has said in the past.
What were your thoughts? She made, Donald Trump made a strong closing statement by saying, why didn't they do all the things that she's proposing during the 3.5 years that they've been in office? And Biden did this entire moderate stance back in 2020, and she's trying to do it again in 2024, but she didn't talk about her policy changes between 2020 and 2024. Her whole centrist moderate stance is just a facade.
What do you make of that, you guys?
It reminds me a little bit of the post-DNC glow when everybody in the building was just talking about all the joy. Don't you feel joy? You're being joyed on all over your face. And there was tangible joy, or at least a euphoric sense of relief in the audience, because they didn't have to pretend that Joe Biden was fit to be president, or at least like a good candidate. They had some nice speeches from the Obamas and Oprah Winfrey and stuff. So people were in a good mood. They had a really great DJ, legitimately, playing like Sweet Home Alabama. So there was joy in the building, but they tried to incept the joy as if all of America was feeling it. And no, all of America isn't the people who can get through 75 security checkpoints and into the United Center, for a few days. Americans are people who haven't heard from this vice president, right? We know who Trump is. Americans know who Trump is. There's not going to be a lot of new information unless he somehow changes in a certain way. And there's an argument that maybe he's changed a little bit. But they don't really know Kamala Harris as a presidential candidate and aspirant. And as the guy said in the Pennsylvania focus room, we haven't got good explanations at all about how she's changed her mind and how this then impacts what she's going to be like. So that, yes, is the job of a moderator, but it also gives us a sense that maybe there's a cap on, even right now, on a debate that it seems pretty clear that she won. I think most people who watch it will say she won. But the question is, how much of an impact is that going to have on people when you have, on one hand, a lot of those who don't have that natural sense of democratic joy are going to look at the way that this was moderated and presented and feel like this is just continuing the sneering that I'm reacting against. This is the thing that attracts me to begin with, even if we don't like him and think that he colors too much outside the lines or don't like this policy or that. Part of the Trump coalition and the modern day Republican coalition is a revulsion at kind of elite discourse of journalism, of whatever the elites think that they were trying to do. You're going to put more people in that position. Mm-hmm. So the DNC bump, there really wasn't one. And within a week or two, it kind of dissipated. I think that she will get a measurable bump, but I think that there's a ceiling on that precisely because of that response. And also just because it has been a 50-50 race all along. It's not going to become 80-20.
Okay, so this is what's interesting. So she won, but what did she win? Did she actually persuade anybody? Or are there millions of people sitting at home like that guy saying, I did not hear her explain why she flipped on fracking, and I know she flipped on fracking. I did not hear her explain the private health insurance or the guns. She just denied it, but I've seen the sound bites. And here was another person, this is a CNN focus group, who got a similar message, who had a similar takeaway, like, okay, for all the dazzling, like, rhetorical, oh, you didn't do this and you're terrible and everyone hates you. This was his takeaway. I think it's a him. Watch.
I think it's important to remember that we are voting for the leader of our country not who we like the most or who we want in our wedding party, but who is actually going to make our country better. And we're in an incredibly unique situation where we've had both of the candidates in office before, and we've gotten to see what they would do. And when facts come to facts, my life was better when Trump was in office. The economy was higher, inflation was lower, things were better overall. And now with Kamala's administration, things haven't been so fantastic. And she's saying she can fix the problems that her administration has caused, but I just don't know if I can afford to take that risk.
Were you leaning towards the former president coming into the night?
Probably.
And did you vote for him in 2016 or 2020?
I did.
Interesting.
This is the thing that frustrates me. As you know, I heard some people talking about this last night. Republicans, I think Ben Shapiro was talking about it. I think he's a pretty good weather vane for Republicans in some senses, is that you hear the anger from people. And I know, Megyn, you said you had some sympathy for him. You hear the anger at Donald Trump for not seizing on these opportunities. Those were two articulate answers from two different panels on CNN, and I guess the other one was Fox. But these people who make, good points, and I've heard it before when I'm out in the field talking to people too. And if you're a Republican, you have to say, on the immigration issue, why are you talking about cats? Why are you not talking about the border in a more substantial way? You get to it at some point, right? Well, yeah, you get to it at some point. You get to the end, and people did remember that, but they're there at CNN, tasked with watching the whole debate. Is everybody getting through? I was getting exhausted by minute 85, and then he leaves the good stuff for the end. And I'm thinking of that if I'm in this situation, and the moderators are being this way, you could have so many of those people in those focus groups talking about the good line, not a canned line, but a natural line in the way of like Reagan's, which I think was probably a canned line. There you go again. Going after the moderators, look at what these people are doing. This is your media. These are the people that are telling you things about me, right? Do you trust these people? Something like that. But when you talk about the crime stats, all you have to do is beseech the audience to listen to. And say, what's the nearest city to you? Do you feel that city's safe? Do you feel like things are better? Do you feel like your groceries are less expensive than they were under my administration?
Have you gone into a CVS lately? What was your experience?
Correct. Everything's locked up. You can't. I literally. This is actually true. The other night I was in the city. I was trying to get painkillers, and I was like, "Fuck it. I'll screw it. I'll deal with it," because I had to find someone to unlock it. And it's like, no, this is an annoyance in my life that actually kind of matters to me because writ large, it's a big thing. But Donald Trump has absolutely zero discipline. He's so obsessed with personal grievances. As I said, the people saying, oh, it's genius that he mentioned the crowd size. No, it's not genius. I know
that's
that.
not genius.
You know that.
No.
Everybody knows that.
But if you look back, but I will say, Moynihan, if you look back at, like I did at the transcript, he brings up the economy a lot, to his credit, and he did bring up immigration a lot. He did manage to weave both of those things into his messaging throughout. It was just so much shit being thrown at him, it got lost. Here's another, this is David Chalian over on CNN talking about a focus group on the economy. And watch this.
Who better understands problems facing people like you? Before the debate, 39% said that about Harris, 43% Trump. And look at how that flips for Harris. After the debate, 43% of the debate watchers say that she understands problems facing people like them. 40% say that about Trump. Now, look at the economy here. Who would better handle the economy is what we ask. Going into the debate, before the debate, 37% said Harris, 53% Trump. After the debate, again, margin of error stuff here, but numerically she lost a little ground. 35% said so after the debate, that she would better handle the economy. 55% said Trump.
That's the risk in just dodging and weaving if you're her on these answers. Like, she threw out the same nonsense about how she's going to, I don't know, give up people $25,000 loans and she's going to help small businesses. People don't buy it. They don't trust her to handle the economy. They know Trump can do it. And I think his last message about, were you better off 4 years ago? Why hasn't she done anything in these past 3.5, may have resonated with some people, notwithstanding.
Uncle Joe, the elderly statesman who runs down the middle, was going to just bring us together and we'll get away from the chaos that is Donald Trump. That was the promise 4 years ago. Then the guy went on a tour where he basically worked race into every single speech, agitating every person that wasn't white, saying white supremacy was the bigger, and doing much more divisive agitation than anyone who came before him. And now we're supposed to believe this isn't going to happen again.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, that was just the promise.
She's on camera saying, be more woke. That's the answer to everything. More woke.
Biden at least had the dignity to lie when he was running, saying, we're just going to tack back toward the middle. We're going to stop. We're going to cool the temp, stop the vitriol, and we'll bring sort of civility and sanity back to the United States. Now, he didn't do any of that, but who knows what he knows, and he's probably just being told to say something. But Kamala, I would have nothing that would lead me to believe that this would happen again. And by the way, how could it if the rules are like, so here are the rules on the left. We would like to turn your city into a sanctuary city. We would like to protest on behalf of Hamas. We would like 13-year-olds getting their genitalia cutting off. And then if I say something about it, now there's a problem. Yeah. And now there's agitation. Well, excuse me, crazy person. You can't. If I had a roommate and he said, my policy is I always leave the refrigerator door open and I never do my dishes and I don't flush the toilet, I'd go, well, that's not right. And then he'd go, oh, starting trouble, are we?
No unity.
No unity for you. It's like, yeah, you come in here with a bunch of crazy ideas and policy that's destructive and hurtful. And when I raise my hand and go, I'm not down with that, then you go, oh, I thought we had unity.
They're so divisive. I'm going to bring back unity to the country. So enter Ron Howard, who I'm so disappointed in little Opie. So he made the movie J.D. Vance, Hillbilly
Worst
Elegy.
Metallica song ever. Enter Ron Howard.
He made the movie Hillbilly Elegy a couple of years ago based on J.D. Vance's best-selling book. And good for him for making the movie, even though at that point we knew that J.D. Vance, seemed to be more Republican-leaning, but more of a Trump whisperer at that point who could explain the white working class as opposed to, it's fine to be a Republican as long as you're never Trump Republican. Right. And so he makes this movie about him. And just like Glenn Close, who felt the need to take a shot at J.D. Vance rather than just keeping her pie hole shut.
Oh, yeah, she played the mom.
She played the mamaw. The mamaw who changed his life. And so Ron Howard is asked about this new evil J.D. Vance.
Yes.
And whether he regrets making this film. And instead of taking the high road, Adam, like I stand by the storytelling. It was a great American story, and I'm not going to weigh in beyond that. That's for the voters to decide. He goes full low road. Watch.
I have been surprised and concerned by a lot of the rhetoric, coming out of that campaign. Given the experience that I had then 5-6 years ago, I'd say that I've been surprised. Listen to what the candidates are saying today. That's what's really relevant. It's who they are today, and make a decision, an informed one.
But then he added more. He gave an interview to Deadline, and he said, here's the question, by the way, from Deadline. You made an underdog story about a poor young man from a dysfunctional family with a grandmother who would not let him fail. He has evolved from that young man into a polarizing, volatile conservative. Nice objective question, Deadline.
Yeah.
I'm sure people have said to you, Ron, what have you unleashed? How do you process that? Blah, 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 blah. I'm very surprised and disappointed by much of the rhetoric I'm reading and hearing. People do change, and I assume that's the case. So he's surprised, disappointed at the rhetoric, and he's concerned about it and really wants people to listen to what they're saying and then vote accordingly. None of that on the Kamala Harris side, none of that when they called him a Hitler, none of that against the complaints that he's a misogynist, to actually, in this case, give the other side and say, you know what? I know he said some things that are controversial, but the man I came to know was raised by strong women who changed his life, and I have to believe they had a long-lasting effect on this man.
Yeah, well, it's interesting when you think about a guy like Ron Howard, because he'll say things I've heard coming out of their campaign. Things you read on Variety and USA Today and LA Times and New York Times. There are people in my life who I talk to all the time. They legitimately have no idea about what the story, what the true comments, good people on both sides or whatever. They have no inject bleach. He said inject bleach. I read 10 articles that said, why should I hire, why do I want to vote for a guy who said inject bleach, or that, all Muslims were terrorists or something
dictator,
like that. And, he said, he said he was going to be a dictator and bloodbath on I think first day's dictator, second day's bloodbath. But either way, why would I vote? So to be fair to Ron Howard, he may just be reading this stuff in the places he gets his information, which could be the LA Times, in which case he would think that that's what they're doing. They go,
needs to cast a wider net.
J.D. Vance said school shootings were a good thing, and he hopes there's more of them. Right. Oh, man, well, I wouldn't vote for that guy. Not voting for that. He swims in a swimming pool with a shirt on. I'm not voting for him. So Ron is probably in the bubble. The bubble gets their info from within the bubble, and many of them legitimately do not have any idea what is going on outside of that group. And when they get their information from CNN, but it could be ABC or NBC, it doesn't have to be, MSNBC, they get their version of he said school shootings were a nice thing, and then they believe it, and then they form their opinions. Mm-hmm. Now, what is kind of on them is everyone needs to be a little more dubious. You know what I mean? When you hear that headline.
At this point, the media is lying to you about Trump. You must know this.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a two-way street. You'll see conservative things come out that says, Tim Walz said the Holocaust was a good thing, and I go, he probably said something about the Holocaust, but I don't think the right media doesn't do it nearly as much. And the left, that's what they do. That's their thing, is twisting stuff. But as a person that consumes information and then has to report it, on the air, you have to kind of put on your hat that has a big question mark on it and kind of go, let me look into this a little more. Even if if J.D. Vance thought school shootings were good, why would he say that into a microphone in front of a crowd?
Truly stupid.
That's something he wouldn't do it even if he thought that. So let me go back and watch the tape. and they don't do it.
The number of flip-flops that she's done, I think the left has heard about these. They just don't care. They like the original positions. They believe her that her values haven't changed. They know she's got to say they've changed in order to win this election. And over the weekend, one of her campaign spokespeople came out and really put a new spin on it. But I think it was a fine spin for the left. They'll go along with this. This is Ian Sams on Thursday, actually. It was on CNN. Take a listen to SOT 25.
She's been part of the Biden administration. I mean, she has been part of the Democrats have been in control of the country for the last 3 going on 4 years. And you are still seeing this in the polling. I mean, these working class voters are telling us right now that more of them are with Donald Trump than Kamala Harris. Why? What is it about what you guys have been doing for the last 3+ years that explains that?
Well, I think, again, we're trying to talk to the voters and explain this message. We've got 60 days until the election. We don't have time to sit around and think about why over the last few years certain things may have happened or may not have happened.
You don't?
Nah.
Probably his wallet looks pretty good. His trips to the grocery store are not stressful. And this is one of her top people saying, we really don't have time to think about why what happened over the past 3.5 years happened. Just vote Kamala Harris.
Yeah, so we're at an inflection point as far as I can tell, which is sort of Subaru good vibes taking over Ford tough, built Ford tough, and Subarus are built with love, right? Mm-hmm. And the people like us go, I'm just a brass taxer. I want to know all the information and all the policy. But there's enough. And I think what it is enough men have sort of slid over to the good vibes made with love department. It's probably circulating estrogens and too much plastic in our food and low testosterone.
Could be a thing.
Oh, yeah. No, guys are turning into women, essentially.
They're losing all their sperm.
They're losing all whatever made them dudes, and so they're not worried about powertrain warranties anymore. They're worried about puppies and love and lesbians and station wagons. So that's where we're heading. And all politicians do is they go, ooh, we're drifting toward love. So Kamala Harris is all, Joe Biden, do you think he knows who Dylan Mulvaney is? You think he cares about the trans community? You think he knows any of this stuff?
I think Dylan Mulvaney sat down with Joe Biden, but that doesn't mean
no,
Biden
he doesn't know who he is. He
No.
didn't know who he was 10 seconds before that. Never
still
cared.
Doesn't know.
Still doesn't know. The point is they licked the finger. Somebody told him we're drifting toward the feminization and the love, and there's more dudes turning into women every day. Mm-hmm. So I don't mean physically, I'm talking about like chemical castration,
exactly.
just turning into females. And why not run on good vibes? So what they're saying, what Kamala's side is saying is, look, we don't need to get into all the nuts and the bolts of the policies and the feds and the reserve and the oil reserves and drilling and fracking, border. What are we doing that? We're good vibes. He's mean. Yells and stands there at looking very Mussolini-esque. So we're just running over that. Now, as far as the technical stuff, the actual policies, just do what they do in the Subaru commercials.
Yeah.
Don't talk about it.
That's
we're talking
right.
about this.
That's what I think she's going to do tomorrow night. She's going to do like economy, opportunity economy, and we're going to protect seniors.
Right.
And we're going to clean up the environment.
Right.
It's just going to be these sweeping, empty promises. I don't think she's going to drill down on any policies because she's got to stay as close to generic Democrat as she can. Although, I mean, as I discussed with Larry Elder, right now that's not working that well for her because that latest New York Times Siena poll shows her support is not that strong. She's not as strong with traditional voting blocks within the Democratic Party as they expected her to be. And the only group she's really doing well with, to your point, is women. The gender gap is real. Harris has got 39% of men. Trump has got 56% of men. Harris has got 53% of women. Trump has got 42% of them. But there's only so far the sort of interesting message of love and abortion can get you.
Yes. Yeah, well, I mean, it's sort of, to me, it could all be distilled down into the concept of a sanctuary city. If you wanted to kind of go, well, what's a feminine thought? What's a masculine thought? You know, and you could talk about energy and taxation and borders and things like that. But the cities that went, we are a sanctuary city, all are welcome, all shall be treated with dignity and respect and love, and have zero plans in place when the buses started pulling up, and now people are splayed out in the parks and the streets and in the gymnasiums where the taxpayers' kids used to play, and so on and so forth. That is the actual representation of good vibes policy. It sounds awesome. You know what I mean? We're sanctuary city. Everyone's welcome. There, no humans illegal. What actually happens when people start spilling into the city?
You know what, Adam, I'm
chaos
listening to you. I'm so
destruction.
annoyed. I'm annoyed because it's like, this isn't feminine. Feminine women are Republicans. Not all of them, but generally the women in the Republican Party tend to be feminine and strong and amazing, and the men more and more are more masculine. And if you look at not all Democrats, a lot of my friends are wonderful Democrats, but the left, the progressive left, this is not what a woman is. This sort of afraid, overly emotional, lead with love and let the illegals. That is the worst kind of feminism I've ever seen. I don't understand these women at all. They don't represent me or any of.
And to be clear, you know, Margaret Thatcher was a female who did not embody these thoughts that we speak of. And when I talk about this in private, your name comes up as one of the leaders in the clubhouse of females who should not be mistaken for this kind of thinking.
Thank you. Yes. But it's like, I hate the way it's going. Like, the Democrat Party is the party of no spine unless it comes to shutting you up and shoving wokeness down your throat. And the Republican Party has all of the strength and the robust nature that's necessary for governing, but as a result will be made into demons by that left, which happens to control all of the message boards throughout the country and beyond. That's really what's happening. And they're gonna claim feminism and womanhood. These women who are gonna vote for Kamala Harris somehow represent like the feminism, like the new feminism in America. And I just reject that. Feminists, what feminists should be is strong, fierce, smart women who stand up for what they believe in, but haven't forgotten the glories of being a woman, the wonders of softness, and not overly emotionalism, but emotionalism, where that's why men love us. They need a soft place to fall. They need, my husband and I go in to see like the decorator, and we're redecorating a room, and it's like the decorator's talking about all the wallpapers and the, you know, sofas, and then he gets to the cost and he's like, well, and he looks at Doug when he says what the number's going to be. And Doug's like, well, I don't know about, and I'm like, YOLO!
Yeah.
But it works. Like, that's how men and women work together. One is more sober and one is more fun, or one is more of the, whatever. They want men out of the picture altogether. All they want is the far left angry woman who's going to emasculate men. All of it makes me recoil.
You know, I think what we need to do from a message standpoint, I agree with your soliloquy. What we need to do is, as the guy, you know, I'm the guy going at home, diet and exercise. These kids got to get some exercise, and no, you can't eat taffy for breakfast and whatever. And then I get labeled as the mean one.
Fine.
Because I'm saying that. And I think a lot of the stuff we're talking about that's sort of coming out of conservatism is diet and exercise. And now we're being labeled mean because their personal trainer wants them to watch TV and eat fudge.
They will be dead by age 50.
Right. And I'm saying, I'm not a bad person for suggesting you do things that are good for you. That makes me a good person who doesn't dance like Ellen. But I know you don't like the message, and I know you don't want to get up and do some road work in the morning. And I know you would rather have Honey Smack cereal than a poached egg. But let's not confuse me with someone who's hurting somebody. I'm actually helping somebody. And there's a lot of that, like, for instance, even going way back, here in LA especially. You know, they had an English only in school thing. And then all the nice people were going, they should be taught in their native tongue. And it's like, yeah, and then they graduate and they can't speak English and they can't get a job. So who's the mean one in this equation? The guy who says, let them learn English in the first and second grade and they'll get fluent in it and they'll move on and then they could get a job, or the nice person who's saying teach them in their mother language?
Better to have a couple rough years when you're 7 than when you're 20 looking for a job. I'm
saying diet, you're saying Ozempic, you know what I mean? Why am I the bad one in this equation? COVID comes down the pike and I'm saying lose some weight, get some exercise, and everyone's yelling at me, get vaccinated and stay home. And I'm like, shut the school down. I'm saying open the school. I'm the bad guy for saying open the school. Now the kids have fallen off. They're way behind. Depression, suicide, whatever comes along with sheltering in place for 2 damn years. Why am I the bad guy in this equation?
And then when you are proven right, they move on. They don't admit it. They move on. They may do the same quote mistakes, and a new way forward, you might call it.